Welcome to this special Tech Titans presentation on breaking barriers for differently abled people through technology. I am E.G. Nathan, I just go by Nathan, the Global Chief Architect Leader in the CTO organization with Red Hat. And it is my pleasure to serve as your MC and moderator of our program today. I also serve on the Tech Titans programs team that plans the quarterly tech industry luncheons and virtual programs like this one today. On behalf of the programs team, I am delighted to bring you today's program with three outstanding panelists from different parts of the country, each with a unique story to tell. See, these virtual sessions, that's what it enables us to do. It allows us to reach out to different parts of the country, different parts of the world, to bring industry leaders like the ones today to come together in a virtual setting. There are with no geographical boundaries or constraints. Before we get started, there are a few short announcements. The programs team is pleased to have the UT Design Capstone Program at the University of Texas at Dallas as the presenting sponsor this year of the Tech Industry Luncheon Series and the special virtual presentations. With over 40,000 square feet of ideation, fabrication, testing, and meeting space, the UT Design Program Studio provides senior level students the opportunity to work alongside the tech industry's leading companies in developing solutions to real-world problems. The program has captured 10 national first-place awards in university capstone project competitions since 2014. Tech Titans thanks UT Design for sponsoring today's program. The last Tech Titans program of this year, 2023, will be held by our Cybersecurity Forum on December 14th at the Richardson IQ headquarters. A panel of cybersecurity experts provide information as they answer the question, your organization has been breached. Now what? Sounds scary to me. The program will begin at 3:30 and conclude with a networking happy hour. I look forward to that program too. The next full tech industry luncheon will be on February 2nd and headlined by the chief economist for Comerica Bank, Bill Adams, who will give a brief economic forecast for 2023 with an emphasis on the technology sector. That briefing will be followed by a panel discussion regarding demographic and economic trends for North Texas. Information on the panelists will be posted soon. Information on all of the Tech Titans events and activities can be found on the website at www.techtitans.org. That is TECHTITANS.org. Let's begin our program today with an introduction of our panelists. As I introduce each panelist, after that introduction, I would request you to make a brief opening statement on the topic for the day, breaking barriers for differently abled people through technology. Let me start with Dylan Rafferty. Dylan is the Donor Relations Manager for the Robotics Education and Competition, REC Foundation in Greenville, Texas. He is also the founder and chief navigator at Dylan Listed, a company he founded to focus on promoting the creation of inclusive opportunities for all businesses, entrepreneurs, nonprofits, and individuals, including those who self-identify as persons with disabilities. Dylan is also the founder of the North Texas Disability Chamber, a Texas 501c3 membership-based community nonprofit organization. It is the fifth disability-focused chamber of its kind in the United States and fourth in Texas. Internationally recognized for his ongoing achievements, Dylan is a vocal advocate for corporate social responsibility with an entrepreneurial and growth mindset. He builds strong relationships while earning the respect and trust of our citizens, duly elected leaders, regional business nonprofit communities, and academic government agencies. Please welcome Dylan Rafferty. If we were in person, this is when the audience would have burst out in applause. But Dylan, sir, please go ahead, share your initial thoughts.
Yes, well, thank you, and hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us on this lively conversation about breaking barriers. As someone who is a person with disabilities, I'm deaf and hard of hearing, and I have spinal back fusions, among other disabilities. I will say that technology is the future, and in a lot of ways, I look forward to discussing further on what that looks like and how we can make it accessible for everybody. So thank you, Tech Titans, for the opportunity, and look forward to continuing the dialogue with my fellow panelists.
Thank you so much, Dylan. Thank you for making time. Moving on to our next panelist, Anthony Pasilio, Vice President of CAI Neurodiverse Solutions in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Anthony is recognized domestically and internationally as an expert in neurodiverse employment. He specializes in advancing neurodiversity programs and leads the global expansion efforts of the company. As the previous vice president and global head of autism at work for JP Morgan Chase and Company, Anthony has expertise in managing neurodiversity recruiting efforts, developing candidate pipelines, and ensuring best practices for onboarding support, training, and organizational success. Throughout his career, Anthony has served in a variety of technical and commercial roles in the banking, finance, and healthcare industries with roles at MBNA America, Bank of America, and Cigna. He is an alumnus of CAI's Managing Diversity Leadership Program, and in conjunction with JP Morgan Chase's Autism at Work program, was awarded the Adam Heavner Award by the Autism Society in 2019. Please join me in welcoming Anthony Pasilio.
Thank
Your
you
thoughts,
so much,
Anthony.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be on the panel with such esteemed guests. I think, I am neurodivergent, and I think we'll talk about neurodiversity a little bit, but I have extreme social anxiety disorder. I have depression, but I'm also kind of the brand and media ambassador for CAI Neurodiverse Solutions, which is kind of funny, right? So the guy that does the podcast and the panels and all that good stuff has extreme social anxiety disorder. But the bigger breadth of what I do is I help companies build neurodiversity at work programs, and I think breaking the barriers in tech, that is one thing. I think breaking the barriers within companies and organizations, that is a completely different thing. So, assistive technology, I think we'll get into that. There's a lot of different things that people like myself have needed for a long time, and now tech is catching up to all of that. And I'm so proud and privileged to be able to talk to everyone today.
Thank you, Anthony. Our next panelist is Chad Foster. Chad is a good friend of mine from Red Hat. Chad is a world-renowned keynote speaker, sales finance leader, and inspirational change agent. Let me just say that whenever I have heard Chad speak, and he has done that many times with different crowds and in and outside of Red Hat, I get motivated. I walk out a better person. Chad was the first blind executive to graduate from Harvard Business School's program for leadership development and has been featured with NBC, CBS, Forbes, the Atlanta Journal Constitution, USA Today, and Chief Executive Magazine. After losing his eyesight while attending college in his early 20s, Chad started at a top consulting firm and has built a career in the technology industry where he has directed financial strategies and decisions resulting in more than $45 billion in contracts. Chad was not exactly situated in a convenient spot for this webinar, but thankfully he has taken remedial measures to make sure that he could be heard, seen loud and clear for today's webinar. So I want to extend a special thanks to Chad for making time and accommodating our schedule. Please welcome Chad and your thoughts, sir.
Thank you, Naden. That's great. So I think the opening thought that I'd like to leave everyone with as we embark on this conversation, I look forward to the conversation, is because of technology, because of everything that we have at our disposal, now is the perfect time to go blind. And that really gets into mindset and perspective. But how do we show up in these circumstances and embrace the opportunity disguised as a challenge that's lying in front of us? Technology makes a lot of things possible that just simply weren't possible years ago. So now really is an incredible time to go blind. And don't worry, people, we're not going to be taking applications or anything, but it's all about the perspective that we show up with. Thanks, Naden.
I want to thank you, and I want to cue off what you just said. It's a great time to go blind. Let me start off with an opening question. Is being differently abled, is it a challenge or is it an opportunity? Because
yes.
if you say, if you say, it's a great time to go blind, it sounds like an opportunity to me, even though the conventional wisdom might be, oh my God, it's a challenge. So in fact, I pose it to all three of you, so jump right in. Is it a challenge or an opportunity? And yes is a great answer, and if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, I'll just finish that thought, and then I'll hand it off to the other panelists to talk about it. But I think, yes, it is. It is a challenge, and it is an opportunity. And I think that's true whether we're talking about blindness or different abilities or obstacles that we face, whether that's digital transformation, reinventing businesses. All of these things are challenges and they're opportunities. And if we were to live a life without any challenges, what room would we have for growth in our lives? And how rewarding would it be to live a life without any opportunity to stretch ourselves and to grow and to move forward in life? So I think any challenge is an opportunity to grow. And what you'll find is that the biggest challenges that we face in our lives present us the most opportunities for growth. And that's where, from my point of view, where fulfillment and gratitude and appreciation come into play.
Yeah, and Chad, I appreciate your sense of humor, for one. I think that is it's incredible. I'm laughing hysterically over here at a couple of things that you said. But as we talk about the opportunities, and I talked a little bit about myself too. It's come a long ways since I'm 50, so I'm semi old at this point. It's come a long ways since the early 70s when people didn't understand what neurodiversity is, right? And for those of you that don't know what neurodiversity is, it's the way that the brain kind of the variations in the brain functions and how it thinks, and maybe it's a little bit differently, and it includes autism, OCD, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, all of those things. And I think the challenge and the opportunity growing up was the challenge. The opportunity now that I'm older and in the space is to change those mindsets, right? And technology, from my perspective, from mind mapping software, taking random thoughts and it puts it together, and amazing, excuse me, amazing technology, but it gives us the opportunity to look at a completely untapped talent pool, right? So breaking that barrier is allowing other folks like myself and like others to come into the workforce and be able to provide to the bottom line, but also to provide independence, newfound responsibility, confidence, all those other things. So yeah, yes is the good answer. None.
Yeah, before we get to Dylan, Anthony, I am more than 50 years old. So in my books, you're semi-young, not semi-old.
I appreciate that, my friend.
Go ahead, Dylan.
Well, I will say a couple things. So I'm a young adult, a young professional. I'm at 33 years old, and it is Chad. To your point, in some ways, it's good to be at this time in this day and age where disability inclusion and accessible technologies are becoming more evident and being more a line of focus. But I will say is, being differently abled or being part of the disability community of some sort, it is, yes, both a challenge and an opportunity. But I think it's important to understand that the way we perceive disability can vary by person to person and then at any stage of their journey. I will tell you, 12 years ago, I thought disability was an obstacle. It was something that will be hard to overcome. It was something that was not going to be, well, it is part of my identity, but it was so focused on the negative aspects of what disability is. But I've learned so much over the last decade and more that disability is part of who I am, but it's also an opportunity to start the conversation and open new doors to, for example, when it comes to technology, when we think about accessibility, is how do we make our technologies, our products, our solutions accessible to a widest possible audience, not just beneficial for you or my peers, but is also for people with disabilities. So as long as we understand that everybody's preconceived notions of what disability is at different stages and different cycles throughout their journey. And so that's why I wanted to highlight that.
I love that point. When I first went blind, I certainly didn't have the perspective that I have now. When I was first going through that change curve, this happened to me when I was in college. I was at university doing my undergrad, and it was really tough. We ask kids all the time what they want to be when they grow up, and guess what? None of them, and I mean none of them, say they want to be a blind person. So it was really, really difficult facing that harsh reality and figuring out how I was going to move forward. So you're right. It certainly didn't maybe capture the different stages that we go through as we deal with a transition, the change curve, if you will. How do we accept it? How do we show up in it? Certainly it varies, but now it's been for me over 25 years in hindsight, no blind joke intended there. But it's easier for me to digest it now because I've learned how to tell myself better stories about my circumstances, which that's really hard to do when you first embark on that change curve, when you're in the middle of the change curve and in the eye of the storm, so to speak. It's really easy just to only focus on the disruption that you're facing and not the opportunity. So regardless of what change or transition we're dealing with, it's really challenging when you're in the middle of it at first to step back and take that more positive oriented view and seeing the opportunities that lie in the disruption. So thanks for pointing that out, Dylan. It's a great point.
Absolutely.
Yep. So by the way, this is more to the audience. This is an interactive dialogue, not just between the panelists, but everyone here. So jump right into the chat, ask your questions, make your points, disagree, have a healthy debate. That's what makes that's the advantage of the virtual panel. That everyone here can chat while we are talking, which something we cannot do in person. So let's take full advantage of technology here, right? But Chad and Dylan, just based on that exchange that you just had, is there a stigma associated with being differently abled? I'm like, to your point, Chad, you said it so well. When we ask kids, none of them said they want to go blind. So
Yeah,
is there a stigma associated? Is that kind of, does that
absolutely.
pose a challenge?
Absolutely, there's a stigma. When I was first going blind, I was at university and I was trying to hide the fact that I was losing my eyesight. And it was really hard for me because I didn't want to be blind. I wanted to be able to see, but my eyesight was fading. And so as I was walking around university campus, I was trying to pretend like I could see okay, even though my eyesight was fading fast. And so I would bump into people, I would bump into obstacles, and that was a really tough time for me. And not until I got my first seeing eye dog, I got a large German Shepherd named Miles, a 100-pound German Shepherd, that forced me to embrace the very thing that I've been trying to hide, which was my disability, my blindness. And so you can't really hide a 100-pound German Shepherd in a classroom, right? It's pretty obvious he's there. You can't really cover that up. And a funny thing happened once that forced me to embrace my true self, this part of me that I've been trying to hide. It forced me to do something that I wish I would have learned before, but certainly I'm grateful that I learned it in my early 20s. And it really helped me be unapologetically authentic to who I am. It forced me to own me, all of me, even the parts that I thought were ugly and that I didn't like. And it forced me to not apologize for that part of me. And that really was transformational for me personally, because I now wore my disability on my sleeve, so to speak, with the German Shepherd leading me around. And no longer was I trying to hide it. And it helped me be really authentic to who I am, and not having to feel like I need to hide it or be apologetic about it. And that was a real gift for me personally.
Thank you, Chad. That's such a powerful message to all of us, being unapologetically authentic about who we are. And, one doesn't need to be differently able for that to apply. It applies to every one of us. So thank you for
Absolutely.
sharing that.
Absolutely.
And along the same lines, Anthony and Dylan, I would love to hear your own stories,
Sure.
just like Chad shared, the stigma and how you dealt with that. Was there a stigma? Your own personal experiences, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Dylan, do you mind if I go up?
Yeah, go
Yeah.
for
All
it.
right. So yeah, the stigma is there, whether it's in the United States or it's somewhere across the pond. You know, I'm gonna get to the journey here in a second. So from being a young kid, knowing you're quirky and a little bit different, and trying to mask and cope and trying to figure it out, and people looking at you a little bit different, going, okay, maybe he's a little bit off. There's nothing off about me as you go through life and you figure it out, and you just do it. But I think from high school to college, I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna go be a radio and television guy, and I'm gonna embrace my anxiety disorder, my depression. I'm just gonna go full force forward. Well, that didn't work out so well, right? Because one small piece and you're kind of falling apart. You don't have the support mechanisms. People don't understand your own family, might be a little bit challenged and they just don't know what's going on. And I think, very timely question, Nadan, because, yesterday marks and this is the challenging part for me, marks the third anniversary of when I tried to take my life. And that day, December 5th, 2020, I lost my wife at the time. I lost my son. We just recently reconnected because my anxiety took over the whole human at that point. I am lucky enough now I just got married 2 weeks ago. My son was my best man. Like there's a lot of positives in that. But going through life and either people going, he's just a little odd, or not being able to tell anybody because fear of not so much retribution, but like, am I going to move up the food chain at work? What are they going to think of me? Do I need something that'll, make me work better? Which we know is the greatest question of all time right now, is that you should be asking, hey, I need this tool, technology, to do my job better. Are we able to do that, right? You should ask that question. But I think being open and honest about who you are and being an advocate for yourself shows others that they too can get past that stigma and show, just who they are. I think it's all about, Nanan, it's all about being a human being and being empathetic, about being compassionate, about asking somebody, how you doing today? So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Anthony, for sharing that, especially being open and honest is actually very powerful. It was the key takeaway for me.
Thank you.
Joe, I see your hand raised.
Yes.
My question to you is, can your question wait after Dylan shares his?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
But if it was specific to Chad or Anthony, you could jump in. That's what I was asking.
No, I'm just gonna relate to Anthony a little bit, but Dylan, go ahead and I'll hop in after that.
Perfect.
Okay.
And by the way, for everyone else, Joe is setting a great example. Don't be shy. Jump right in. Yes, you have panelists, moderator, and so on, but hey, we are a fun crowd. That's what Tech Titans
Party.
is. Yes.
Well, I appreciate Chad's and Anthony's sort of their background and so forth, but I will tell you a little bit about me. So I was born on August 24th, 1990, the month after the ADA was passed. I always like to share that fun fact because I'll be honest with you, I don't think my family would have known what the possibilities were available if that ADA did not pass at that time. But I will say I had a birth defect, and because of my birth defect, I was hospitalized for first couple of months, and then the first 2 years of my life, I did not eat. Because of those birth defects and conditions, I had congenital hearing loss, and because of that, I had 2 hearing aids, and I don't wear my hearing aids now because I'm wearing headphones. But I will say is now, sorry, I'm getting a lot of notifications. I don't know why, but anyway, so with all of that, I will say in 1997, I had a stapedectomy surgery related to the eardrum to improve hearing on my right ear. Due to ear infection, it caused total deafness. And so I can no longer have a hearing aid on my right ear. I have a hearing aid on my left ear. And I will say that change, and one of the barriers for deaf and hard of hearing individuals is communication. And in my situation, I had a very good speech therapist who taught me within a year and a half and said, you don't need this anymore, move on to the next, and so forth. And so that's how I don't necessarily have an accent, but people in my community have an accent when they're deaf and hard of hearing. Some people rely on captions, which I enabled captions on the Zoom call, but also some people don't need captions. Some people need ASL. So there's a spectrum of what that is. But I will say ADA started the conversation, but it didn't necessarily complete the conversation. It is a conversation starter that opened the door for compliance standards, mainly in the physical realm. But however, in recent decade, we'll talk about it further, but the idea that accessibility is becoming more prevalent in the digital landscapes and what that looks like. But I will say it is a stigma associated to it. As somebody who went through many hurdles, both in education to out in the community, in the workplace, you name it, there is a stigma. But I think what should be understood is that one thing that I'm able to overcome that stigma is because I surround myself with people that think and look and act differently than me. Why? Because it actually allows me to see a different perspective than just my own perspective. And I think that is something where technology should open the doors to include people from other backgrounds and other experiences and skill sets, because that's how we should be thinking of it, as a disability is a good thing. And here's another thing. In my advocacy realm, people have different labels of what disability should be, or what, is disability an acceptable term? My eyes, it is. Not everybody's eyes that way, but I will say that we should be open to using these words, and words do have meaning, they do have purpose, but it shouldn't be seen as a stigma. But again, everybody's at different stages in their journey.
Thank you so much, Dylan. Joe, go right ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say hi, everyone. I was just gonna say, Anthony, thank you for speaking up about mental health. That's, to me, a huge, huge thing that I find very important. And like you, I have suffered from mental health issues my whole life, and battling some things right now. And I struggle with the thing of like, what's the limit of what to tell work, like where do you draw the line of this is too much, this is like they need to know this for my safety or their safety, or do they need to know as much as my friends do they need to know as much as my family does, and to what extent. And the medication that I am on, if I don't take it, there can be some serious consequences, like so it's sort of the unseen disease.
Yeah.
The unseen, because, and not to, I don't mean to say this in a negative way, but the physical ailments are very visible, and we can see that in the people on the panel and on the streets and everything. But the mental illness that's capturing the country now is just, people are battling that silently still.
Sure.
Because they're afraid to speak up, because they're afraid of the stigma that's attached to it. And it's causing a lot of people to speak up, but I still think they're afraid of, to what extent can they do that?
Yeah.
So I think that, I when you mentioned that, I just wanted to applaud you and say thank you, and Chad and Dylan, thank you for being here as well. But I did relate to you, Anthony, and I just wanted to say thanks, because in technology, we're looking for ways to combat and fix things that I think can be seen, but it's hard to tap into the things that cannot. And and that's hard for people to see the things that can't be seen,
Yeah. So right. Invisible disability is what kind of the term going around town is now. In mental illness across the globe at this point is very prevalent, and I can tell you, it just doesn't touch one portion of individuals. It touches all individuals, right? Regardless, right? There's can be some fallout, as I mentioned, but I think personal preference about advocating for yourself at work. You may not go into the full-fledged, what you talk about with your friends. And I know from a medication standpoint, right, not taking certain medications can be detrimental to your mental health. But I think it's also going in there and not like boo-hooing it,
right?
Like,
of course,
going like, I'm gonna own this. And I'm gonna say, you know what? Here's what's going on. I will let you know if something goes awry. And this is what you need to know at the moment. May it impact my work? Well, I might need another break because of something, but I'll let you know if that's the case. HR organizations now are pretty well in tune, right? That most of this stuff is documented somewhere, which is okay. I just feel that you're being an advocate for yourself, and it's a personal choice what you choose to do. I'm always of the guys of, let me know what's going on as much as you can, because that's going to make me be able to help you out if something comes up. You know, and we're always trying to tie it back to technology, right? So in mental health and as we talk about breaking barriers, we have work to do in the mental health piece, right? So from a technology perspective, you know, when you start a company or start with a new organization, they give you, you know, Reg Z, Reg A, whatever you got to do your new hire onboarding. Disability should be one of those things that's prevalent within that, right? If you have, if you need an accommodation, here's our portal, our accessibility team. Dylan, I know you're probably right on that, about what I might need to do my job better, regardless of it's, you know, if I'm in a wheelchair or I have, you know, a mental health related issue.
Yeah. And it
So,
goes back to that, to that, filling out applications or whatever it is. It's like, it's like the last question is like, are you a veteran? Are you, do you suffer from one of these disabilities? And it's like, I remember, years ago looking back at this and I'm going, do I want to fill this out? Like, is that going to count against me if I put this down? Or, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm totally good. So like,
Well,
I feel like I can never win.
I think we all want you to be who you are, Joe.
Yeah.
I think that's the takeaway. So however you're able to get there,
Yeah.
you should get there.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm working on
we
it.
would be pivoting to, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. We would be pivoting to, I mean, what we just went through was personalizing the problem statement. That's how I see that, because there is no better way to do it. You know, just putting some politically correct neutral text on a slide doesn't cut it. You know, if we can associate names, faces, experiences with that, that actually hits you in the gut. It hit me in the gut, like 4 different times so far. And I'm going to go for a 5th one from our good friend Kerry, who just shared her story. And I'm going to also give a heads up that once we hear from her, it would be a technology conversation. So we'll get into the phase of what do we do about it? How can technology help? We have the challenges and opportunities. So how can technology improve the quality of life, for everyone at large? That's going to be just a heads up on the next question to follow. But Kerry, if you don't mind coming on video and sharing your own story, it would be fantastic.
Hello, I'm not sure if it is coming up. Can you see me yet? No.
We cannot see. I see a black box, but we hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so we'll just skip, the tech. I have auras with vestibular migraine, so it's fine. I have video off, so the movement doesn't bother me, so maybe it's related to that. But so hi, I'm Kirsten. I go by Carrie. I too am a Red Hatter. So I've been hard of hearing pretty much, off and on, deaf to hard of hearing my whole life. But recently, since 2020, was diagnosed with semicircular canal dehiscence, a positional vertigo, and Meniere's disease. And so with a lot of changes that were happening, so part of the Meniere's is not just vertigo, but balance issues. And my cognitive cup was overflowing, even, just trying to walk. So, it's changed a lot of how I was able to function, never mind work. And so I started to be completely open about my being, hard of hearing and losing my hearing. And yeah, it's been amazing. It's changed my life in so many ways. I say, unfortunately, there are those that aren't ready to understand, and that's fine. And I wanted to come on and just thank you for doing, these types of excuse me, conversations. I sign more than talk now. So using my voice is, it's a bit wearing, but thank you for doing these.
Absolutely. Carrie, you said something that triggered a different thought. I think I heard you say there are those who don't understand the challenge. And
yeah, nor are they ready to, I feel. So when I was on screen, my job as a program manager is, managing the program globally, and that required a lot of screen time. And when I was on screen, people wouldn't necessarily hear what I was saying because they were interested in watching, because I co-sign right now, and that's signing while speaking, to get the words to come out of my mouth because of the aphasia. And some people just were like, "Is she drunk?" And that's a common thing with Meniere's. And that's where I said, you know what, my work speaks for itself. I'm not going to be embarrassed by this. I'm going to just come out, and the support was huge. But there were, again, some people that weren't willing to or able to get there, to give, to understand the changes that were happening to someone that they've known for years, myself, so hopefully they'll come around. Yeah.
yes, well, and therein lies my next question, open dialogue again. There is a lot of talk even on this, in this panel, the word accessibility was brought up. But is that the only issue, or is there an acceptability issue? As in, and that is why I picked on that particular experience you have had, Kerry, unfortunately. So is acceptability of disabled people, like Dylan said, you should use that word. So I'm going with what Dylan advocated. Disabled people, acceptability of the disabled people. Is that a challenge? Is that something that the world needs to grow into and grow into more acceptance than where we are today? I would love to hear from everyone on that. Anthony, you want to take the lead?
Sure. So I'm all about the acceptance piece. And I'll tell you one thing. So a few years ago, it was all awareness. We were doing awareness training, and, that was the buzzword. Now we've moved from awareness. People know, maybe they're still not on board, but now we're going to the acceptance phase, right? And you'll see, like, it's not Autism Awareness Month in April, it's Autism Acceptance Month. It's World Autism Acceptance Month. I think we still have a ways to go. It's not all accessibility per se. I think we still haven't changed the minds and the hearts of the mass yet. You're still going to see culture not changing within organizations. And I know you talk to a lot of people, and there's a lot of big companies, and all the folks here are, we need them to go back and start the open dialogue, as you said, Naden, about acceptance, about people with disabilities, about invisible disabilities, about physical disabilities. Like, there's so much that it's been pushed. It's race, gender, ethnicity from that perspective, and now other things are coming to the forefront. So the awareness piece is already there. We got to go right. So I'll stop here, and I'll let Chad or Dylan chime in.
Well, I will say this. I agree. There's different phases that we go through. Same thing in the technology world. We talk about ideation. Ideation goes through different phases and so forth. But what I will say is this. Unlike most people, I say, you know what? Acceptance is good. Acceptance and the awareness is good, but reality is we need to start normalizing adoption and what was the other word? Adoption and I forgot the other word, but basically adoption and normalizing accessibility and disability inclusion in this realm, because those are the two big words that I would love to see our communities, no matter what industry, sector, community that you live in, we need to adopt and normalize what accessibility and disability inclusion looks like, and what disability is. And so that's my model. And yes, and I'll be honest with you, for some of you on this call, in DFW, compared to other metropolitan areas, we're 15 to 20 years behind compared to other areas. Because although we're very business focused, the idea of adopting disability inclusion and accessibility in this area is very, very behind compared to other areas where there's a higher emphasis around improving that. And it could be many factors. It could be political, it could be social, it could be cultural, it could be many different avenues that is preventing that progress. Again, one thing that I would also acknowledge that getting somewhere, we have to look at the three words: progress over perfection. And what I mean by that is my friend Meryl Evans, who's an accessibility leader locally, my fellow disability inclusion advocate, she talks about progress and the importance of progress. Every day, progress can be many things. It can be a roller coaster of a journey. One day it's up in the higher end, and the other day is a very low end, but it's still progress. And I think that we need to look at it as not everything has to be perfect first time go around, but look at it as going through incremental stages of growth and progress.
I love
Thank
that.
you, Dylan. Chad, did you have thoughts to share? I was going to go to technology, but
can I just take maybe 1 or 2 minutes here? None.
Yep, please.
Yeah, there's something here that I think is really important to call out, and that I think we as a society at large have moved towards this seeking comfort culture. And so whether it's the Amazon Prime shipping or the instant gratification, or there seems to be this craving that we as a society have for being comfortable. And being comfortable is completely at odds with handling change, handling differences, growth and innovation. And so one of the things that I think has helped me on my journey of going blind and dealing with the physical discomfort of going blind, and then the social discomfort of going blind, and then all of the other discomforts that go along with it, is I've learned through trial and error how to get comfortable with discomfort, how to lean into discomfort, how to do that physically, how to do that psychologically, how to do that emotionally, how to embrace things that are different, whether that's a sport like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or learning how to ski, not being able to see, or having a conversation with somebody who's totally different than me and not knowing where that's going to go, but embracing the differences. I think we have a disconnect because in society, people often seek out people who are similar to them, and they don't want to have the uncomfortable conversations. But I think that really is where the opportunity lies, not only for people to come together, but for us to get the most from different individuals to build the type of social connection that we need, and also, quite frankly, to build the business value that organizations need when we think about how do we bring the best ideas from different walks of life, recognizing that everybody from different walks of life have unique strengths. People who are in certain situations, different experiences, and different backgrounds have a unique basket of strengths that others don't have. And so how do we have the sometimes difficult conversations to bring the best out of each individual so that we can contribute not only to the fabric of society, but to organizational value and the products and services that we're putting out there into society, so that we can drive value, we can leverage the best of each individual, and society can benefit the most. So I'm a big advocate of us all learning how to get a little more comfortable with the discomfort.
Very well said, Chad. Let's stick with you. I do want to, I mean, this is Tech Titans. So the technology is half that, half of that name right there.
Yep.
So we have to do something about it. I'm sure everyone here has got a technological and architectural or engineering mindset, call it what you may. So now let's shift to, so what can we do about it? We are not the ones who are going to just rest with, oh, these are the challenges we have, let's live with it. That's not us. We're going to take steps to make the world a better place and see how we can honestly, yes, get comfortable with discomfort, but also let's try to do something about it. So that's the spirit of the next question, Chad. I'll stick with you. How can technology help? What is the role of technology given all the experiences we have shared so far?
Yeah, technology plays a huge role. It's already doing many of these things. I can speak for people with visual disabilities, just the way that it's breaking down barriers in terms of making things that are accessible electronically, opening up doors to things that are in the physical world, whether that's using an iPhone to scan a restaurant menu or to connect with a mapping system to get directions. So I think there's a lot of progress being made there, and so we should recognize that. I think there's still some room to be made. Not not everything has been solved. Obviously, there's still a lot to be done, but I feel like we've got a foundation now of what to do. But there are two things here. There's the sort of, at least I'm thinking about it in two streams, if you will. There's the stream of solving the tactical problems. So whether that's helping a blind person navigate a very large indoor airport using things like beacons or some sort of similar mapping technology that's indoors, or maybe leveraging artificial intelligence and building that into some sort of prosthesis that can be incorporated, whether that's something that you carry around or what have you. That's sort of the tactical. But then there's the other thing where I think we have an opportunity, and that is the topic we just left of acceptance. And so how do we create acceptance? And I think a lot of that has to do with how can we leverage technology to bring some of the human connection back. And so through storytelling, through real human understanding, that I think maybe we've got an opportunity there. There seems to be a little bit of a gap in some of the connective tissue that we have as people. So how do we bring people closer together and create some of that human understanding and empathy so that it does help with the acceptance piece? So at least, I don't know if I'm thinking about it the wrong way, but I'm thinking about it in two streams, the tactical and the strategic. And to me, the strategic is working on that awareness piece, but obviously we have to work on the blocking and tackling, tactically speaking too, and solving those real world problems.
You're most definitely thinking the right way, Chad, in my books at least, as you always do. In fact, you opened up some avenues for me to think about personally I had not thought about earlier. Anthony and Dylan, I would welcome your thoughts as well. What is the role of technology, and how can you bring your own set of unique experiences? So what do you see the role of technology being, and how has it helped? How could it help?
Well, sorry, Anthony, if you don't mind. Okay. So there's two things that I really want to focus on. I will tell you, since the pandemic, it has been both a good and a bad thing, but it actually opened the door for accessibility and how to make technology improve, and opened a lot of doors. But also, it was the one time that I would say that disability advocates across the United States have come together and in coordination of making sure that companies like Zoom start adopting accessibility and making it user friendly, including the iPhone update. I just realized I'm getting audio messages now that have captioning of that audio messages, something that I don't is a very good time to think about that. But I will say there's two things that you got to look at: the role of technology and the way that you guys can play a role in contributing that effort. The first is developing personas and ideal fictional characters of potential users that would want to engage and interact with your technology or solution, products, and so forth. I know that a lot of companies partner with universities. I know Tech Titans partners closely with UT Dallas Design, as well as other organizations that help students that are going into the phase of in technology, cybersecurity, AI, you name it. They're developing personas and how it is going to be beneficial for people. That's number one. Number two, I think is a very focal point, is when are we, and typically the design process, people bring in people with disabilities as stakeholders to help ideate or help develop the look and feel or the design process of technology solutions. And I will tell you this: people with disabilities today, currently, I would say a good portion of them are only included after a design was implemented. It should actually happen at the very beginning of your design process in the technology realm. And I think people with disabilities should be part of the conversation from the very beginning. And I think that a lot of companies focus internally. I also challenge you to do it externally. So bring members externally from your communities as well as internally who can work together and ideate. But also, disability is in some ways is a human experience. Technology is enabling a human experience, and I think sometimes technology lacks the human experience from real people who would actually benefit the use case of technology. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
No, that's awesome. You led me to a couple of things, right? So we're going to talk about tech and employment and disability and accessibility. So there's a couple things. Let me first talk about the interview process. What technology is now allowing us to do is we actually have a neurodiverse friendly hiring platform where it uses gamification, no timing, maybe some video if you choose to use it. It's allowing us to assess cognitive and behavioral aspects of individuals. Like there's a deep download of data that we can get, but it's also allowing us to see who that individual is, what their passion is, right? Regardless of the fact that if you are on the spectrum, if you have autism or you have PTSD, we're still using that neurodiverse friendly hiring platform. We're not going and getting a panel interview with 6 people in a room shooting questions at you because we know that some people have delayed processing or they don't look you in the eyeball. And that turns off some managers because they haven't been, educated and trained. So first piece is the technology, the use of neurodiverse friendly hiring platforms. The second piece that we see coming is in higher education is the use of virtual reality as a technology to allow individuals to experience what an office environment is like without going to the office. So I know that there's a couple schools that are developing or have developed this technology to ensure that their particular um, neurodiverse group on campus can utilize that because they're trying to get past whatever it may be, anxiety, whatever that may be. I was writing down so many notes. Dylan, you cracked me up when you're talking about visual voicemail. What an awesome technology, right? So I have a Samsung, and you got to pay for the service of visual voicemail, but if I am in a meeting from a work aspect, I can't be distracted, right? So I might have noise canceling headphones on, right? That's my accommodation at work. And I'm not looking down at my phone, but oh, heck, I might get distracted for a second, but I can read that message that came in that might be super important. My wife broke down or something like that. So that's how technology is kind of playing into employment practices and making accessibility a greater piece of what we do on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm going to stick with you because um, I'm just going to come right out and say it. I don't think neurodiversity gets as much visibility as some of the other disabilities. And, there is gender, ethnic, and there are all of those types of focus. Not that they shouldn't, they absolutely merit that. But the awareness of neurodiversity is not on par with the rest. That's just my assertion. I'm going to give you the floor to say more about neurodiversity, Anthony.
Yeah. So you hit the nail right on the head, and I alluded to it a touch, right? So, here in the States, we have Thanksgiving, and the adults, if there's a lot of people, they typically sit at one table, and then they put the kids at the other. So for far too long, neurodiversity, right, thinking differently, has not been as recognized as a disability, right? And diversity in general, including race, gender, ethnicity, always had and more in the past 5 to 7 years, had a seat at that big person's table, the adult table, and we were kind of over here. It's kind of shifted, meaning we're all eating at the same table now. We got a voice. about invisible disabilities. And I think we've moved the needle this much, not in, I shouldn't have the job I have, right? So, and I say that even though I have a mortgage. Neurodiversity should be part of your DNA of how you hire people, attract people, retain people. And if you can't figure out how to bring in and service individuals and make them be their authentic selves at work with some minor technological needs like screen readers and mind mappers and different things like this, then again, you are missing a wide swath of talented, hugely talented individuals. So me being who I am, if I didn't tell you that I was neurodivergent, you would never know. You're like, hey, Ant's just talking and he's talked all over the world and it's great. Oh, awesome. Why should I listen to him? Then I have to tell you because you don't know otherwise. Drives me bananas, none. Absolutely insane. But neurodiversity is one of those things where, I think from a cyber perspective, right? I absolutely think cyber, pattern recognition, attention to detail, all of those things that I may be good at. We don't hire people to do those things because they can't get through the traditional interview process. But the other thing, last comment, to the left and to the right of you is somebody who is neurodivergent. You just didn't know it, right? I'm sure there's people that are sitting at all these firms, technology firms, that are absolutely neurodivergent, never been diagnosed, you know, just like I was. And typically it's like 2% of your population, and it's probably more of that. So if you had 100,000 employees, it's 2,000 that are neurodivergent. I know that number's huge.
Excellent, excellent. Reminder to everyone, and if you want to jump in with your own questions, I mean, the whole idea was we will have a panel discussion, and then there is Q&A at the end and so on. But hey, Joe jumped in, Kerry jumped in, anyone, we have been doing that all along. So I'm still going to move on, but if you have questions, chat them, come on camera, or you can just voice it, whatever works best for you. Just a quick reminder. So moving on, we talked about technology. We stated the problem, the experiences. We talked about accessibility, acceptability. Now, you can have all the technology in the world, but if you don't have access to data, to what avail? And I would love to hear from all three of you about the role that data has to play. I mean, meaning a leading question here, in a way, I guess, does everyone, the people concerned, have access to all the data they need in order to actually do the right things? Awareness is about not just information, but also having access to data as it is produced. So jump right in. I'm not going to call out names. I know all three of you are very opinionated about this. So just fight over each other to get the mic. Go right ahead.
All right, I'll throw it out there first. No, we don't have access to all the data, right? So we do a program every year, once a year, trying to get people to sign up and put on the bottom line and check the box that I have a disability. We've gone so far as to make the box a little bit bigger with neurodiversity in there, right? Because that's what I speak about personally. But not everybody's checking that box who probably should be checking that box. And then we can't take the data and figure out what other methodologies or things that we need to do internally to help those individuals, right? So we don't have a large data set to go off of. Now, it may be different in other countries, organizations. I can tell you in a few countries that is just, there's quotas to fill. So you got to have X percentage of people who are who are disabled working for you. But I can tell you that we don't have enough data. Sometimes we have to guess, Naden, and that's terrible. If we have a person who comes to us needing an accommodation, we should be thinking, well, if that's one person, I bet you there's a whole bunch of other people out there that probably would benefit from having that other piece of technology or whatever the assistive piece is. So I'm going to say that no, we don't have great data sets out there to get us through. I'll
So
leave it to
before,
Dylan. Yeah.
well, I had a follow-on question on that, just the way you phrased it, Anthony, before getting to Chad and Dylan. So I cannot believe technology is the problem. We don't have data. Technology is easy. Getting at, so what is the challenge? Is it a cultural challenge? Why don't we have the data we need?
Yeah, it's definitely not a technology challenge, right? Because you can create a program to check a box on a, onboarding process, right? Or every year you do a little program. I think it's the culmination of data that we're not getting because people in general, and Joe talked about it, right? There's I don't know if I should check that box because now it's going to come back to me. Now they know that I have a disability. And, a disability is diabetes is a disability. I have that too. I don't need anything at work to do anything like that, but you are saying that maybe I need to have an EAP program that is based on somebody having diabetes to help them control their diabetes, right? So, I mean, it's a person problem that we can't get the data set, but we have
Thank
the
you.
technology to get the data, just can't use any of it or some of it. I shouldn't say any of it, some of it.
Dylan, Chad, on the data topic.
Yeah, I can tackle this. So I think there is a gap in the data, and I'm thinking about just in terms of workforce challenges in the workforce as someone who cannot see. Sometimes the data is visual because humans are, generally speaking, visual learners and visual communicators. And that is obviously not an easy thing to do when you can't see. It's hard to learn visually, to state the Captain Obvious statement over here. And so there are some challenges, and the data is there. But I think to your point, Naden, is it the fact that technology can't do it, or is it the way that the general consensus of people consume information and thinking through alternative ways of consuming information? And so I think there's a little bit of a gap there, and some of that gets down to leadership, management, awareness of who's on your team and how do they learn. And so you may have somebody like, it's not just visual impairments. Maybe it's the way that we organize meetings. Maybe you have people on your team who are introverts versus people who are extroverts. And so maybe your normal leadership style is inviting people to meetings, having a topic you put on the table, having an open debate, expecting people to debate it on the fly, and then coming out with some sort of consensus when people who are more introverted have a lot less comfort with that. So how can you as a leader and a manager think through the different types of styles and personality types on your team so that you can equip everybody to contribute to the conversation equally? And in this case, maybe it would consist of modifying your leadership style to give people the agenda ahead of time, let people know that we're going to talk about a certain topic, allow the people who are less comfortable debating on the fly, allow them to consume the information, form an opinion, and then manage the discussion so that people aren't fighting for spots to debate, but you actually manage the conversation so that everybody has an opportunity to voice their point of view, so that it's not just the loudest voice that gets heard. It's actually, the best idea that can bubble up to the top, where, a lot of those ideas today may be, getting lost in the shuffle because people aren't creating the learning environment, the team environment, so those ideas can float to the surface.
Very well said, Chad. Thank you. Dylan?
Well, the data is a difficult thing for a lot of reasons, and it comes down to the last 2020 consensus data. Have you noticed in that questionnaire, there's nothing related toward disability? And is at least from where I came from collecting that data or filling out that data form. It talks about every social class, almost every social class, except for disability. And in a lot of ways, I wish we had accurate data and around accurate and real-time data. And unfortunately, there are some speculation of what data is and what the populations are and who they're serving. There might be some overlap between older adults and young children in the educational sector and the workforce sector. But reality is, and I'll just tell you, speaking of tech titans in North Texas, we just surpassed 8 million people, more so than the Houston metropolitan area, which is shocking to me as somebody who's lived in Dallas-Fort Worth all my life. I never thought we would surpass Houston, but we did. But in that, knowing that, about 10% of that population is persons with disabilities. So about 800,000 individuals with disabilities living in this area. How did I pull that data? Well, guess what? It's based on the observation of what the Texas Education Agency provided, as well as what the local workforce boards provided of the North Texas region. And based on the data, I can accurately say is about 10% of the population living in our community. But it doesn't give me that direct number. You have to find it. And the readability or accessible of that data is not readily available to us. And that's also a challenge. Yes, some people will be more inclined to disclose, some people will not. There are some challenges to disclosing. And I will say, as somebody who applied for a number of positions, I am more now confident to self-identify. And I did. And guess what I realized? Within 24 to 48 hours, I'm rejected automatically. But when I did a study, and I did a study just for myself, it may be different from everybody else. But when I did not self-disclose, I didn't get a notice until 2 or 3 weeks later. So it could be by situation, it could be by company, it could be based on how the algorithm is set, it could be the AI, it could be many different components. And I think the challenge there is threefold. One is the people like us in the disability realm. Do we feel confident in disclosing that data, or is there a stigma that they may not necessarily consider us based on the experience I had with applying for application? Or the second is really, who are the leaders making the decisions of what kind of data should they collect? The biggest concern that I hear from a lot of people that are creating data sets is HIPAA laws. But reality is, yes, in some ways, but if I remember correctly, HIPAA is more on the spectrum of people that are not adults. I think as adults, we have the choice and the option to disclose, but it should not be a requirement. It should be a choice. It should be an option. And then the third thing I think really is how do we make data readily available and accessible so that people can gain access to the true populations or the true needs of our community. And one good point of that is the consensus data. We continue to fail to include disability in that realm because all that money that could be going to our states would have a good real-time data of knowing what the needs of our community and so forth.
Thank you so much. We are approaching, we have about 4 minutes left towards the top of the hour. I would request all three of you, Anthony, Chad, and Dylan, to share your final thoughts, takeaway. And these thoughts are for the world at large. Definitely for me, for the people on this call, but even those who are going to watch the recording, no matter what segment of the population they fall under. Maybe they have disabilities, maybe they are differently able, maybe they have other kinds of challenges. I honestly find it hard to believe that there is a perfect human with no challenges at all. I find that hard to believe. That's just a little too idealistic. So in a way, this really applies to all of us. So what would be key takeaways, maybe one or two closing thoughts from all of you? I would give you a minute to think about it if you want, but jump right in. Take it away.
Yeah. Chad, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I think one of the main things we have to do is we can't solve what we can't confront. And so I think just everybody being willing to have the difficult conversations. You know, it's hard, but people with disabilities finding the courage to disclose and be honest, and you know, equally people that they're working with or they encounter finding that same courage to have, you know, those conversations that can move things forward. I think if we can confront openly and honestly, and everybody can own their role in the situation, I think everything gets a lot better. I think the technology is there. I think maybe some of the hesitation is social. So I'd love to see us just be willing and courageous to confront what is there, and move forward together in partnership so that we can create that kind of progress.
Thank you, Chad.